Um, Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the next Coptic lesson. We can just start off by having a prayer. Turn on the screen share here. ونرفعنا مفيوت نمبشيري نبت مما ثواب ونوتي نوت أمين جيبن يوت تخني في أوي معرف توهون جيب كران مارس إن جتك متقورو بيت هناك معرف شوبي فريتي خانت فيه لم هي جن بكاهي بين أويك انتراستي ميث نانم طو وكان يتيرون نانيفل انتن كويفل النية تاون انتان إرو وان per enten von Erasmus alla nahmen evil habitat ho ren de Christos suspensiois jetok tetim uru nem tigom nem piu shaene inteniene tiroamin خنفرنا فيوت نبشيري نبرلما ثواب ونوتي نقوت آمين. Okay. Welcome back, everybody, and we're gonna get going here. So last time, as you may recall, we went through the reconciliation prayers and just went through and translated that into. So now we're going to move on to the next section of the liturgy. And so, like we talked about before, we're going to focus primarily on the Coptic parts. And just go through and kind of break down the grammar and explanations of what we have. So this part, starting the part of the anaphora word, and I'm using the website. You can see the link, the URL here, tesafada.org. It's just an easiest place to pull up the texts. There may be some typos here and there, but we'll try to correct those as we go along. And so this part here is Greek. So, P, oweeb. Oweeb is the word for the priest or presbyter. P-weeb is the definite article. So just saying this is the line for the presbyter. So here is Greek. This section is Greek. O Kyrios meta kanton imon. And again, this is Greek, but we can just recognize some of the words like Kyrios is Lord. P, Laos. Laos is a Greek word meaning people. So the people. So the people's response. Ke meta to pneumato so. And again, you may recognize it pneuma meaning spirit. Again, Piwib, Ano, Himon, Tas, Cardies. So here's interesting. Cardies, for any of you, especially in the medical field, you may recognize that word right away, but it's from you may recognize in English cardiac or cardiology. It means heart. So Cardies means heart. So this is when the priest is saying, lift up your hearts, cardias and cardiac. So whenever you hear it in the liturgy, that's referring to heart. Lift up your hearts. Echomen proston Kyrion, again, Lord. The oweeb, the priest says, Eucharistiso mento Kyrio. Anybody, if you have any Greek people or Greek friends or anything like that, whenever they say thank you, they say Eucharisto. Thank you. So if you recognize that, if you know Greek people, then this is referring to giving thanks. So let's give thanks to the Lord. And then exion ke dikion. And exion means like worthy or fitting or meet. Ke means and dikion is right or just. So worthy and right or meet and right. Or it's just basically some grammar that I'm familiarizing you guys with, which I'm sure many of you already know. So here comes the priest's response again. Exion ke dikion, exion ke dikion, twice. And again, just repeating what we're saying with the response here. And then another section, edikos, var. And then now we finally start to get to some Coptic words. Okay. So edithos var. So edithos is means truly, and var, for truly. That's just again a Greek particle meaning like something like for. So for truly. And then like we talked about before, sometimes there's these kind of duplication things from where they'll say something in Greek and then say something in Coptic, the same exact thing, or say something in Coptic and then say the exact same thing in Greek. So this is another one of those situations. So for truly, and then in Greek, and then in Coptic, chen, remember it's a preposition meaning in, at, by, and then u, myth, me. So me, again, the root word means true or truth. Myth, me, remember that's the prefix indicating state or condition of something. So in this case, state or condition of truth, of being true. So the state or condition of being true is truth, and indefinite article, truth. So in a truth. So in other words, we say in truth or truly. So basically what we have here, we say for truly in Greek, and then again in Coptic, in truth, for truly in truth. So it's kind of like this duplicated. So we're saying worthy and right, truly in truth, worthy and right. The next part here, fi et shop. So remember, shop means to live or dwell or exist or be. It's the qualitative form of the verb shop. So shop can mean different meanings. Shop, and when you're talking about buying or purchasing something, shop can mean to buy or purchase. But when you're talking about something being like in existence or being like living or alive or something, then it also has that sense as well. So it's two different words, but they're, two different thing spelling. So fi et shop, against the further demonstrative with the relative pronoun. And again, this is the masculine, so we know that we're talking something masculine, but we don't know if it's the singular, but we don't know if it's you or he, you masculine or he, because denote that this just tells us that it's singular masculine. The way we know whether it's you or he is we go down here. Later on we find out right here. So we know it's going to be he. Because all these further demonstratives, they're talking about this thing that's further, and the thing that's further is the third person singular masculine. So fi et shop. I know it's translated as I think the OU, the being, or something like that in the current text, but I guess more precisely would be you or he who is. Again, it's present tense. It's kind of like the best way to think about, the Old Testament when God said, "I am." So here it's saying, "You who." That's the best way to think of it. So the being. I mean, you want to think of it as not like a being, like an entity, you talk about a being. But I think if you want to think about it as a being, you want to think about it as someone who is being. If that makes sense. So that's why it's a little bit difficult to think of it as the being, because it's not like a being, like an entity, but like someone who's being. So that's why, but maybe the simplest way is you who is or are, just like in the Old Testament when God said, "I am," so you are. Okay, so you who are, and then if need, the master. Need again means master, definite article. If choice, the Lord. These are just a bunch of definite articles and nouns here, so it's very easy. If noti, the God. Hente, of. Ti, with me. So remember, whenever we have this prefix indicating the state or condition, it's always feminine, definite article. It's always a feminine. So again, with me is truth. So you who are, comma, the master, the Lord, the God of truth. You who are, or in other words, and again, it's the same thing again, but you can think of it, you who exist, or you who are, chaga'u. So remember we're talking about chaga'u. Cha comes from two parts, but Egyptian. But again, over the millennia, the parts merged into just one preposition. Cha meaning under, referring to go. The go refers to the head, and then again, this is just the pronoun of the third person plural. So, but under their heads, or in other words, it means before. Okay. So you who exist, or you are before, n, just the linking particle, ni ine, the, or eternity, or ine means like ever or eternity. So you who exist, or you who are before the heads of the ages, or in other words, before the ages. Owo, and it, oi, again the relative, and who, oi. Oi is the qualitative form of the verb iri. Remember iri, we see it a lot. In so many different forms, we see iri, rit, right. I'm going to put these dots here where the pronoun will go. But when we see it in the qualitative form, it's going to be oi. So qualitative, just to explain what qualitative is, let's go back up here. So this is the qualitative form of the verb shop, like we talked about. So what does that mean? So that's the infinitive or full form, and then Shop is the qualitative form. So that means that the thing kind of preceding it has the quality of Chopin, of being or existing. As opposed to an infinitive, where the thing before it, it's not talking to the thing before, but it's talking about the thing after it. So here, the shop is referring to the thing before it, or prefix to it. So the thing that's doing the shopping, or the thing that's doing the being, or is or are, is the fiat. So the you who exists. So that's what has that quality. As opposed to the, if this was an omega, then it would be referring to the thing after it. So same thing here. This is et iri is different than et oi. Et oi again is a qualitative form of iri before it, which again is this that we talked about up here. So all this is what's oi. So all this is doing the oi. So all this has the quality of oi. So remember, oi comes from iri. Iri means to be. So to be. So you who are or exists before the ages, and oi, or being, again. Uru. Uru is a Coptic word meaning king, with the linking particle. And our king, Shah, Ine, until eternity, or until ever, or forever. Again, Fiat Cho, you who are, Chen, in, me, but it's the plural. So it's like those. Those is opposed to these. Those is further than these is closer, is near. So those, et, the relative, which, chosi. Chosi is the qualitative form of chisi. So chisi, we see very commonly, like, you know, when we say tenchisi amo, we exalt you. Chisi means to raise something up to a higher level. It's a verb, to raise. So that's why we say to exalt. That's what it means to exalt, but you know, it literally got the sense of to raise something up higher. So that's a good example of seeing the difference between the qualitative and the infinitive form. So let's just explain that further, because it's very common. So tenchisi emo versus ni et chosi. Same verb, but this is the regular form and the qualitative form. So in the regular form, the direct object is after it. Okay? So 10, that's the present tense of the first person plural. So we raise or exalt immo, the direct object, you, the feminine, second person singular. So we raise you, or we exalt you. So what's getting the result of the verb is the direct object is after it. Now chosi is the qualitative form. So what's getting the action of the verb, or what has the quality, has this quality of being high or exalted, is not the direct object after the verb, but it's ni et. It's the preceding part, not the following part, that has that quality of being high or exalted. So what does that mean? So ni et, those which are high or exalted. So those which are high or exalted. Or in other words, the heights or the highest. So it means like the high places or the highest. Those which have the quality of being high. So that's what they call the qualitative. So those would the heights. Over here. So you who are in those which are high. So you who are in the heights, or You who exist in the heights. Places. O and et gosht. Et, again, the relative. And who? Gosht. Gosht means to look. A gen. And again, gen, when you see this preposition, the jinja or jinga, again, it's referring to head, like somebody's head. But again, it's just over the millennia. Again, it's just become, doesn't really mean head. It has nothing to do with that, but that's just where it came from etymologically, millennia, even before Coptic. And this is just the unconjugated form of this. Because remember, when it's conjugated and includes the preposition, you're going to see egoi, ego, 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 egos, egon, egentino, and egou. So this is just the unconjugated, the full form. So egen what? So remember, it means this preposition. It's kind of this combination as opposed to he gen. So remember, it's the static versus active. Okay, so he gen is he means upon the head, or basically upon. A directional adverb instead of a static adverb, meaning there's the action of igen instead of just the static of being on. So in other words, like the book is on the table versus I put the book on the table. One is like a static process versus an active process. So egen is an active process, hegen is a static process. So et gusht, egen. So and who looks upon, again actively instead of not hegen, it's but egen. So it looks upon actively, like it's an active thing that's happening. Looks upon those which thevio, or excuse me, thevio comes from thevio. Again, it's a qualitative form. You're going to have the qualitative form of the verb. So thevio comes from thevio, meaning the low place, something that's low. So we always often translate that as humble also, but it literally means low, something that's low. So if you look at it, you who are in the high and looks upon the low. Okay? You who exist in those which are high and looks in the active way, because it's egen instead of hegen, and looks upon those which have the quality of being low. Okay. It, again, the definite article. Excuse me, not the definite article, the further demonstrative with the relative again. So it, he who, ophthalmio. Ophthalmio means to create or make, and this is the past tense, third person singular masculine. He who created, so because it's past tense. N, thinking particle. Then the definite article, the feminine. Et fe, the heaven or the sky. The heaven or the sky. Nim, et kahi, and the earth, the ground. Kahi is the ground of the earth. And this is the definite article masculine. So et fe is feminine definite article, and then kahi is masculine. So he who created the heaven and the earth. Nim and if, Yom. Yom is the sea. So different article in the sea. Nem and me, those, the relative. Ete, ni ete, and those which. It doesn't really say are, but you know, in English you're gonna say those which are. En chito. En chito, remember it's from the preposition chen, but you can convert it and join it with the pronoun. En chit, en chit, en chiti, en chit, en chits, en chiten, gentino, and then en chito. So the pronoun is here. So, and those which are in them, because it's the third person plural, right? Them. So in what's them? The sky, the earth, and the sea, and those which are in them. Tiro. Remember, this means all. And usually you'll see it. You won't really see it in the first person singular, but you'll see it in the third person singular, tirf and tirs. You'll see it in the first person plural, tiren, and you'll see it in the third person. And the second and third person plural, which is the same. It's tiro for both of those. It's kind of unusual in that sense. So in other words, I think we talked about this before, but you know, doing that 6 box thing that we always used to, that we were using, that I was showing you guys early on. I can just copy this here. So I mean, you never really see this, but you know, in our same paradigm that we've been talking about since almost the first day of the class. Tiers. And so you'll never really see these ones being used that I've got highlighted here, but you'll see tiers, occasionally, but really what you'll see the most commonly is tiren, tiro, and tir. So for whatever reason, the second, third person plural are the exact same. So tiren, tiro, and tir. And again, it means all of him, all of her, all of us, all of you, all of them. So that's why here, I think in the liturgy, we translate it in all that is therein. Nem ni ete, and those which are in them. Okay. If yot, the father, yot means father. If yot is the father, if yot. M, and choice of. Pin, it's a possessive adjective, masculine. Our, choice, Lord. The Father of our Lord, Owo, and Benoti, our God, and Ben Sotir, our Savior. He Christus, the Christ, Jesus the Christ. So Jesus, you can see this, like in English, you know, the J corresponds to the Yoda, the E corresponds to the Eta, and the Sima corresponds to the S. So Jesus, Jesus. So you can see, that where that comes from. So Jesus, P, definite article, and then Christos, you know, from the Greek word meaning anoint or anointed. anointed or Jesus the Christ. Phi, again, this is, we had talked about the further demonstrative, now this is the near demonstrative. So, and it's masculine. It doesn't say it's he or she, I mean, it doesn't say he or you, masculine, but it says the near demonstrative, like this masculine thing, as opposed to that masculine thing. So this masculine thing, but we know it's you because ak is right here, which is when it means you. It's the second person singular masculine. So we know that this is you. You know, that's a nearer thing. So in other words, this, but you who created akthamiu. Akthamiu, remember it's the past tense. Akthamiu. So you who created tir. So we just talked about tir, right? Tir. So tir is all of him, but basically what it means it's the entirety of the creation. So whenever tir, it's going to mean like the creation or the entirety of the creation. So you who created everything, you who created the entirety, or all of everything. That's what tir means. So you who created everything, evol hitot. Remember, like evol hiten we talked about, it's unconjugated form, but evol hitot means through him. So you created everything through him. So he, upon, tot, hand, him. The he is the pronoun for him. So created everything through him. Ni, the further demonstrative now. Et u nav. So nav means to see or to look. You can have attached with the relative, you know, you can have the various tenses, right? So here we've got the relative with the past tense. Here we have the relative with the present tense. So you'll see this pattern here when you link it with the present tense. Okay. Remember the present tense is ti, ek, te, f, s, titten, and se, not u. But when we have the present tense, immediately following the relative, it changes slightly, and this is combined with the relative. So eti, etek, ete, etef, etes, etem, eteten, and it's not ese, but it's etu. Okay, so it's the present tense, but again, it's combined with the relative. So ni, etu, nav. So those which they look, present tense, to them. Remember the verbs of the senses generally have the direct object with the e particle, or meaning to, erou, as opposed to like immou. Remember we talked about that very early on, like sotem, to listen, sotem erou, nav, to look, nav erou, things of like the mind, like kati. means to understand. Kati era'u, etc. So the verbs that have to do with kind of like senses and things like that tend to have the era'u instead of amma'u. They see them, and those which they ni'ete, inse, nav. So the reason this is not ni'etu nav, it's because it's the negative. So the u is not linked directly here, but we have the negative. Remember the n on? How you negate everything with the n on? N on. And those which they in se. So senav means they see, but we've got n on. So it's negating it. And those which they see them not. So those which they see them and those which they see them not. In other words, the visible and the invisible, or the seen and the unseen. So this which you created the entirety through him, those which they see them and those which they see them not. So you who created everything, the invisible, the visible and the invisible. It just depends on how the writer or the translator wants to kind of simplify things or kind of settle things down, but just kind of get the full breakdown. That's kind of exactly what you see there. Fi et hemsi. Hemsi means to sit, so he who sits, again, the further demonstrative, he who sits. Remember, it's a good example of the, passive or static as opposed to the active. Remember, if gen is something actively happening, he, gen, is the directional adverb, but it's a static one. So just upon. So he who sits upon. But when you sit, it's like a static thing. It's not like actively. It means that someone that's like, passive, just sitting there, as opposed to someone who's in the action of sitting down. Like if someone was in the action of sitting down, like from standing up to sitting down, that motion, it would be ejen. But hija means it's statically someone is, sitting there. I'm not talking about the action. So he who sits upon, he thronos, Greek word thronos obviously means throne. He thronos, the throne. Inte of his ou. Ou is glory. His glory, the possessive adjective. So his glory. So he is the one who's possessing the glory, his glory. Fi et tu. So we just talked about this, the present tense. So should be u is the third person plural, present tense. So instead of like se uosht, it would be se uosht if we didn't have the relative. So instead of se uosht, we have etu uosht. So fi et u uosht. Fi etu uosht. So it's a lot of u's in there, but if you break it apart, you'll see why they're all there. Fi u, and then uosht is one word. So there's no indefinite article here. There's one word that means to worship, or basically to bow down. Literally means to bow down. But we know it in the sense of to worship. So when we say uosht, it's to bow down or worship. So, in other words, he who they worship, emo, because uosht is a verb, but it's not a verb of the senses, right? So it's, instead of ero, we have emo. So emof is the direct object. So worship him. Hiten. He who they worship him. Hiten. So upon the hand, or in other words, through. So he means upon. Ten referring to the hands. So hiten. Again, that's an ancient Egyptian, but or put in quotes modern Egyptian, which is Coptic. Hiten means through. It doesn't really have that ancient sense of relating to the hands, but that's where it comes from, just so we can understand it. Hiten. Go. Go means power, and niven, all. So he who they worship him through power all. So he who is worshipped by all powers, which are holy. The relative and the holy, which are holy. So he who they worship him through all the holy through all the holy powers. Okay. Diakon, Greek word for servant, coming from the Syrian word for servant, actually. I believe Syrian, I can't remember. Iketimeni, anastite, Greek for you who are seated stand, the oib, the priest. Okay. Let's see. We have a little bit of time left, so we'll keep going. Again, the further demonstrative and the relative. So you see we said over and over again. Fietu, again, this is the present tense. Ohi eratu. Remember we talked about ohi eratu. Ohi means wait, to remain. But we know it means in this sense to stand, because rat means foot. So ohi, so remain on foot, or in other words, to stand. Okay, ohi means to remain or wait. By itself, it means to remain or wait. But we know in this case it means to stand, because to remain or wait on foot. Rat. So the further demonstrative, so he who they stand on foot or remain on foot, in other words, he who they stand, naharaf. So naharaf comes from, again, we conjugate it, it's the preposition. I'll put this table here, sorry. Okay. So this is how I would conjugate nahri, naharat, nahri, naharaf, naharas, naharan, naharentino, and naharaf. So fietu ohi, iratu, naharaf. So this comes from, the root of this is the hori. Hori means face, comes from the word ho means face. So in essence, you've got like the linking particle, and then the ho or face, and then the preposition. So in other words, let's always say before me, before you, before him, before her, or in other words, like in front of, like in the face of. So he who they stand in the face of, or in other words, before him, namely. So the they over here is namely ni angelos. Angelos, again, the Greek word meaning messenger, the messengers or the angels. Okay. And ni arshi angelos. Arshi, again, meaning the first or foremost angels. Ni Arshi, the first or foremost, again. And then Ni Exousia, the authorities. Ni Ethronos, the thrones. Ni Met choice. Remember Met, again, state or quality, choice, lord or master. So that's what they say, the lordships, quality of being lords or masters. Ni Met choice, and then Ni Gom, the powers. Okay. So let me just see. So here, before whom stand the angels, archangels, principalities, authorities, thrones, dominions, and the powers. So that between he who they stand before him or in front of him, you know, he who they stand in his face, you know, before him, namely the angels, the archangels, the principalities, the authorities, you know, the principalities, you know, principal, you know, the principal of the school is the first of the school, right? So the principals, the first or foremost, the authorities, the exousia, thrones, the dominions. They said the dominions, but you know the lords. Like you think about it, like in England, you know the lords are the ones who they're the lords over their region, or they dominate over the region. So the lordships, the powers. Okay, and then East Anatoles and Lipsate. So Anatoly as the East. So whenever you see Anatoly, it means the East. That's the Greek East Anatoles and Lipsate. And then we can do this last paragraph here in the last couple of minutes that we have. P-O-E, the priest. Enthok, you. Remember, it's just a simple pronoun, you. The Greek particle for you are. Enthok pe. Remember, from the very first or second lesson, enthok pe. But we've got so for you are. So for you are what? For you are etu, ohi, eratu. For you are who, they, remain on foot. On whose foot? On their foot. Eratu, for. So for you are who they remain on their feet. Im pik koti. So koti means around or surround. So for you are who they stand around. So who is the they? In pik koti means your surroundings or around you, basically. Inje, namely, ni cherubim, the cherubim. Eth meh, meh is the qualitative form of mo. Remember we were just talking about meh, about the qualitative. So mo versus meh is the qualitative. Right? So ni cherubim eth meh imvar. So the thing that's full is not the val or the I, but the thing that has the quality of being full. Remember, that's the quality. So the cherubim have the quality of being full of eyes. Right? Ni cherubim et meh imvar. Because it's not moh, but it's meh. It's a qualitative. Nimni seraphim, and the seraphim. Remember we talked about na. It has to do with possession. Fa. Fa and Na. Okay, so this is, and we conjugate it into, using our table here. Remember we talked about foi, fo, 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 fon, foten, fo. Okay. So, and again, the feminine would be the same thing, but the theta, and then the plural is a little bit different. I mean, it follows the same pattern, but instead of the omega, it's the O epsilon. Okay, but I'll show you that in a second. So this again is the it indicates possession. So who possesses it? So the pronoun is what possesses it here. Or if it's in the full form, it's the noun following that possesses the thing. So here, this would be belongs to me, belongs to you, masculine, belongs to you, feminine, belongs to him, belongs to her, belongs to us, belongs to you, plural, belongs to them. So, like folk, pepi, ou, or thok, teti, gom, from, thok, teti, gom, yours is the power, or thine is the power. So this is yours, it belongs to you. Yours belongs to you, plural, etc. So when we have it in the full form that does not have that has an actual noun and not a pronoun, like we have over here, na, pisu, and ten. So belonging to the su, pisu, remember it's the number 6, and 10. 10 is wings or wing. It's like the Arabic. It's probably where the Arabic word ginah came from 10. 10. It actually probably originated from the Coptic. So belonging to the 6 wings. Okay. So you are he, dot, 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 all the way down here. The cherubim, the seraphim, which belong to the 6 wings. So it kind of doesn't make sense, but if you think about it, like when you talk about like in Arabic, I always give people like the example, when you're walking in the street and you see somebody, you say الرجل البتاع العربية الحمراء. It's not the guy that belongs to the car. I mean, the car belongs to him, but we just say the guy that belongs to the red car. بتاع العربية الحمراء أنت. That it's kind of just an expression. So same thing in Coptic. So the seraphim, they belong to the 6 wings, but they don't really belong to the 6 wings. The 6 wings belong to them, but it's just an expression. Same thing in Coptic. So the seraphim that belong to the 6 wings, or in other words, the seraphim with the 6 wings. Ev, er, hymnos. Hymnos, pretty obvious from the Greek word meaning hymn, or to sing. Hymn is a song. So hymnos, is the pre-nominal form of iri. Remember we talked about the different forms of iri up here. So this is the full form, the pre-nominal form. This is the imperative form. This is the pre-pronominal form. But all of this is iri, to do or to make or become. Okay, and this is the present continuous. So they are presently singing hymns. So the cherubim, or full of eyes, and the seraphim with 6 wings, they are presently singing hymns. Chen, in, u, mun evol. Mun evol means to continue. So chen, u, mun evol means in a continue or continually or constantly. In, again, just linking particle. At, kara'u. I mean, ra'u comes from ro, meaning mouth. But again, it gets conjugated into this pattern. So I'm going to copy this here. So it comes from ro. So roi, ro, 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 ros, ron, rotin, ro. So this literally means mouth in this sense. So roi is my mouth, your mouth, etc., our mouths, their mouths. So here it's their mouths. So ka, ro'u, is a compound verb. Ka means to put or place. Replace it. You remember the verb ko, like ko evol, to put away our sins, ko evol. So the ko is the infinitive form. Ka is both the pre-nominal and the pre-pronominal. So you can say ka ro'u, or you can say kav. So this is the pronoun. This is also the noun. And you can also like say like ka novi, right? Okay. Does that make sense? So this, so sometimes the pre-nominal and pre-pronominal are slightly different. But in this case, the pre-pronominal and pre-nominal are identical. So that makes it a little bit easier in that sense. But it comes from the regular verb ko, to put or place. So in other words here, put their mouths or place their mouths. Or in other words, it means it's an idiom. Idiom is kind of a word that means something literally, to put their mouths, but figuratively it means something different. So in this sense, instead of putting your mouths, it means to be quiet. So at kara'u means without being quiet. Remember, at is the prefix meaning without. So they are singing continually without putting their mouths, or in other words, without being quiet. Present, again, present continuous of the third person plural. They saying the direct object, because they don't have it, so it's her. So they saying her, or they saying it. And then what are they saying? The deacon says, let us attend so we can all say what they're saying. And then you can say the response of what the cherubim are saying or singing. So we'll stop there. It's been our hour lesson here, and then I'll work at getting the first homework assignment submitted to the website this week, and then we'll have it posted with the deadline and everything. So we'll have the administrators send everybody a message once that homework gets posted. And again, if you don't have any questions or anything, again, I know the recorded this year instead of live, so you can always try to contact us, but please go through the administrators first to make sure that I get the messages. Thanks, and we'll conclude with our final prayer here. شنفران مفيوت نبشيري من تبنم ثواب ونوتي نوت آمين جي بنيوت تخني في قوي معرف توبون جي كثران Maras I into met uru, Pit naak mar shopi, friti genet ve, nem hijen pikahi, Pen oik enterasti, Nif nan fou, Awo kan yetero non evil, friti hon, ten ko evil, ni ete wonton eru. Awo perenten okun pirasmos, Ada nahmen evil hapi petou, Hen Christos, Isos benchois, Jatok تاتي متقورو ننتيجو من بيو شانان تنينه تيرامين هنفرانا مفيوت مفشيري نتنم بثوابا وتينوت آمين. Good night everyone and we'll see you next time.